Okay, maybe first to you, whether or not it's desirable to have such kind of social protection clauses into a bilateral treaty between the Union and China, and then I can comment on the overall atmosphere here.
Yeah, I think in principle, of course, this is a part of the trade. Usually, I said, without those people who produce these stuff, how can you do the trading? So that's fundamental. So I think they should be there. But what I would like to put out is kind of a attitude. Is at this moment it's a bit tricky. China becoming, in general, the state becoming more and more rich. They have investments everywhere around the world, and they have this kind of new rich attitude, which is quite annoying. In the same time, it is also the reality. They do have a big bunch of money. So if you put too much condition on, it's not really working. It's okay, fine. let's leave it there. So you basically have to consider your own interests when you are having this. And therefore, as someone from social movements, if you try, you can't make it, I'm still thankful. But you don't have to push too hard to lose your arm. So that's one thing. The second thing I would like to repeat, which is now it's different than 20, 30 years ago, during Cold War or post-Cold War period. International community, including China, including many other countries in Russia, they're part of the international community, not the family, but community. But before, you can use this pressure kind of a mentality. I give you pressure, and you change it. So now it is the same things. We're in the same circle. So the globalization makes this happen. Therefore, I would say if we still put too much hope on, unrealistically on international pressure that can change a country like China and Russia, I would say it will be a dream forever, not becoming true. So therefore, we have to do something to fit what is happening inside the country and what kind of change is happening and what people are doing, such as China. Media is acting, the court system is constantly confused and changing, and the leadership is changing again next year. By the way, have you ever seen any kind of modern dictatorship regime switching power peacefully, successfully, for what? For 30-something years more.
Because
so,
it's a collective dictatorship.
Yeah, so it's quite a different things we're dealing with. So therefore, international pressure is one thing, but what is happening inside the country is more important.
Yes, I pretty agree with Dongfang. I think, yeah, in principle, I agree very much. All the trade should have social costs. But the point is, indeed, at this moment, okay, China is so rich and in some way powerful, and you still want to say, yeah, if you want to trade with me, you have to abide by 1, 2, 3 kinds of cost. I think it may not be very easy to achieve at this moment. So for everyone wants to make change in China, to change Chinese society. But I think the change will start internally. So we know that there's now some social groups in China are moving. So we can support those social groups. This one hand. On the other hand, we can also put pressure to the Chinese state, but not in the way that it's difficult to achieve, but in the way that something the Chinese state already say yes, in principle. Let's say the Chinese state already say that okay, all the workers are entitled to social insurance. Then we know that actually the reality is not. Many of them cannot enjoy social insurance, or the party state already said that okay, Chinese workers can enjoy collective bargaining, but now we know that no one really enjoying collective bargaining. In this way, we can press the government to act up to their promise, really do what they have promised to the public and to the international community. I think this will be a more promising approach, and it can really empower those social groups that are fighting for change.
If I am the advisor to Chinese governments, if you are putting this in as a condition, I would say I would do serious research on the violation. Who are the direct violators? And I will give you a figure that 40% of these violations are done by European companies. So why don't you clean up yourself first? Why you put pressure on us? So that's can be embarrassing.
Yeah. I would add some comments from an internal EU perspective. First of all, the rights of the parliament into these treaties is brand new, and it's basically yes or no. We are not negotiating the contents. So basically, we end up being asked to say yes or no to a done deal. So the parliament is certainly not in a position to ask for that. Now, if you look inside the Commission, it's clear that in the international trade DG, it's very obvious that for them it's trade, 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 or investment, investment, investment. If you speak with the Gucht, that's his logic, and there's no place. Well, he's not in charge of human rights or social issues or environmental issues. That's someone else. He's negotiating trade agreements, so he doesn't want to have to do anything with that. Plus, I might add that the pressure that he receives from his colleagues who are in charge of environmental or social affairs is, I would say, close to non-existent. So not only doesn't he personally believe that there's a need for such kind of clauses, but he's not even coming under pressure from his fellow commissioners to do that. And so I don't see many changes happening. Plus, I would also add to what our Chinese colleagues just said. How big are the chances that we can achieve something? Really achieve? I mean, we can of course please ourselves by saying, well, we've tried to have those clauses. But first, we should think, well, if we put some clauses, they must be enforceable. Right? It cannot just be nice on paper, it must be something that you can verify and sanction. Plus, you must be in a bargaining position where you are likely to obtain something. And so when I put everything together, I don't believe that the EU will be the EU Commission will want to negotiate that, and I don't believe that if they want it, that they would have big success, because as you said, if I would be the Chinese government, I would indeed insist that at least your companies are playing correctly in China. And so, from the civil society perspective, I think that there are at least 2 or 3 things that we can do in order to favor a positive evolution on the social and environmental front in China. And I would start by saying is pressure from the consumer side. And that's really exposing companies, and there we really need to discuss and to have the information, because that's usually what's most helpful, when we know that the subcontractors of Apple, XYZ, Nike, or whoever else are misbehaving in China. When we can identify that, then consumers can react to that. And we know that our companies are sensitive to their image. And of course, it's easier when you are a consumer brand. When you are Solvay, you sell chemicals, well, few people are interested, but still we can exert some pressure. So there's the consumer part of it. We are voting with our money and we can have some influence there. Second, it's same kind of pressure at the political level. I mean, that's why we invited, it was over lunch, Business Europe to be represented in the discussion we have, in order to put them under pressure and to have them feel that we are watching what they are doing politically in their relationships, in their dealings with the Chinese government in China. And the third thing to me is probably on the enabling side of the equation. I mean, when we're speaking about collective bargaining in China, when we discussed in Hong Kong, and you said that again today, the need for basically raising the negotiation skills, the ability of people on the ground to stand up and basically defend their rights and negotiate. I think that European civil society, European trade unions, NGOs are in a position by bilateral relationships with China and Chinese organizations, the China Labor Bulletin, SACOM and others, to contribute to actually enable people to improve the situation themselves. Because I believe much more, and that's a personal view, into bottom-up approach by the people there on the ground than top-down pressure from the outside. I'm not saying that top-down pressure will never work, but on China, frankly speaking, when you look at the respective bargaining powers of others versus China, look at the renminbi valuation issue, look at many other issues, I do not believe that we have a very strong negotiating arm over China. And we should recognize that. Otherwise, we are really making fools of ourselves by believing or speaking very loudly and then having to cave in at the end of the negotiation. So that's basically the way I look at that. So I'm not saying that we should give up on environmental or social clauses, but I think that bottom-up approach in China is much more promising. That's really how I look at that. Elja?
Yes, I do agree that for certain reasons that could be much more successful that we try so far as we can to support your interest to have bargaining powers of the workers in China. But I would like to come to another contradiction. Last legislative period, when Mendelssohn was the Commissioner for International Trade, we had the problem, for example, with shoes and textile products from China, that Mendelssohn was very much complaining about these Chinese products because of the dumping prices. And they were discussing whether they should introduce certain standards or restrictions or customs to the European market because the competition was much too high. So then I did not follow anymore, but what I would like to know what is the position in the book towards that. And the second point I wanted to make is, you see there are, even if we have to state that there are obviously the business interests or the capitalistic interests of the West, who very much go together with the Chinese globalization and governance interests, that there, on the other hand, there are upcoming contradictions because the problems for the Western companies with their prices here on the market is a big problem with the production from China when it is so cheap. And therefore, of course, we have to deal with that because it was already Commission level that they had a big problem with that.
Yeah, the dumping is because the salary is unreasonably too low.
Yeah.
So that's related to workers' income. And secondly, when you talk about the currency, if I am the Chinese government, I'm the Chinese leader, I will not lower our currency value too. Why? Because we're now still too much to rely upon the foreign investment-driven economy and foreign investment. So if the value goes higher a little bit, the first hit will be the investment and then unemployment. And all these things as a chain will fall down. So that's at least one of the reasons that makes China cannot make the currency go flexible. So if you have more income from consumers, like normal consumers in China, you have more internal investment. Internal investments, that's what the flexibility of currency based on. If too much rely on the foreign, you wouldn't dare to do that.
Other questions, interventions, don't hesitate. We have another 10 minutes, so feel free.
Just to add on what you said about the social clauses in the agreement, In the PCA negotiations, there are a lot of social clauses which are in the discussions, but the issue is not only with China. For example, we have the EU has a FTA negotiation with India. It's stuck for already 4 years now because India doesn't want to have any social clauses included in the FTA, while the Commission still fights to keep those social clauses, and the Parliament, of course,
On India.
each resolution insists that the FTA will only be endorsed by the Parliament if the social clauses, including labor rights or children's rights or environmental clauses, are included. So it's very true that the Lisbon Treaty allows the Parliament only to say yes or no, but also with the Lisbon Treaty, now the Parliament is much more informed on the progress of the negotiations, so to avoid to arrive at the final stage where you discover documents that you have never seen before. So the Commission knows very well that without those minimum number of social clauses, the Parliament will not approve the FTA with India. And it's really stuck. Even on sustainable development clauses, the Indian side refused to make it. It's not only Chinese.
Okay, well,
I just wanted to know about the 2008 labor law,
So 2008
Labor
Yeah,
contract.
the
labor
labor law,
contract law.
which I would like to have your opinion. Do you consider this was a big progress when this law came into effect? And what are the main changes that you would like to see? Or if we could, in the EU side, we could make any push or assistance to try to improve certain aspects, key aspects of the law.
I think when the law just passed, and I remember we released a statement to congratulate it, although we knew that there's a huge problem in it. We congratulate them mainly on one special section on collective contract, because until then, collective bargaining had nearly no legal base. So once they have one complete section on collective contract, so we immediately found there's a legal base, which is common sense. If you are entitled to have collective contract, that means you have to talk about where the contract comes from, who are going to negotiate for this. So it's not only about the contract is a result, but the produced process. You need representatives, you need election. So you need collective bargaining. So that's the first time, in my opinion, in China, collective bargaining had a ground within the law. But the worst thing in that law was how do you say that term? You hire workers through agencies.
Dispatch.
outsourcing,
Not really.
dispatch
Or-
workers or interim workers.
You already have these 1,000 workers in your factory, right? So you before the law were ineffective, you fired all of them, but just in paper. They're still working. Then you find other company to hire them.
Yeah.
So
And
these
you send
workers
them
are
out.
sent by these companies. So their social insurance, all these things should be related to that company. If that company bankrupt, there's nothing impact on you. So this is the worst one in that labor contract law.
For me, I find the labor contract law is very significant achievement, and it was an achievement of the workers. Yeah, because we saw that from 2004 to 2006, there were a lot of strikes and protests, and the government finding is social force that they cannot escape. They cannot ignore. So that's why they have to make a law like this to pacify the workers and make sure that workers' social force will not grow to a level that they cannot manage. So I see it is an achievement of the workers. And now the government is still thinking of another round of legislation for the labor rights of workers. This is still also a treatment of the workers. But in this moment, I think it is important time for us to intervene to make sure that the new legislation will not have the loopholes like those loopholes Dongfang mentioned. And the new trend is they are not only using dispatched workers, they are using dispatched student workers. Yeah. For so many electronic factories in China, they are now recruiting more and more dispatched student workers because they find that student workers are more easy to manage. And this is a very big problem for us. And now we are doing many rounds of research on this kind of problem. The students studying in those vocational schools, they are all sent to the electronic factories to be working in there.
For extended periods?
Sorry?
For extended periods?
For more than 1 year. And no matter what subject they study, even they study art, study law, and they all go to electronic factories.
Well, I guess that we are going to leave it at that for today. Well, thanks for coming. I think it was a very useful discussion. Thanks a lot to Helga for having taken over from me while I was discussing economic governance of Europe. So thanks, and well, we will continue trying to have those discussion opportunities with Chinese partners as we move forward. Just incidentally, when we discussed with Business Europe this morning, there was an informal proposal made saying, well, why don't we organize a workshop within the European Business Summit next year, which is a thing organized, the big Congress of Businesses organized in Brussels by the Business Europe on this topic with you guys. And so that's probably something that we are going to follow up on. So we might have the opportunity of pursuing the debate, but then with massive attendance of businesses next year in April. So we'll keep those who showed up today up to date on that. So if there's more opportunity, you will know it. Thank you.
Thank you.